The hungry animal remains active, but as the satiated one becomes adapted to the new environment, he settles down and becomes inactive.
Mark Twain once said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. According to the wisdom of Kabbalah, this is true because all of history is steered by 4 forces. Now, what are these 4 forces that are operating all of history and, of course, operating our lives, which are part of human history? Well, a force has no substance that we can identify until it clothes in some matter. That's how we know that gravity exists, for example, because of the force that it exerts on objects in our world. And similarly, we can learn about these 4 forces that stand behind everything by looking at how they operate history, how they operate human society, and how they work on us. The history of human society is not pretty. There's always a battle, a struggle of different factors, different forces, and then there's some respite from the horrors of war and turmoil, and then we're back to the fighting again. And of course, if we look inside of ourselves, we can see that there's also a battle of forces constantly waging war inside of us. Since these forces that are battling in us have no substance, because a force has no substance, we don't really recognize them, we don't identify them until we look and see how they're manifested in the world, in the connection between people. This first force, which we call truth, says that each person should play their part in society and accordingly should receive their needs from society. But there's a problem. If we were able to peer inside the mind and heart of each individual, we would find that some people are not just lazy. Rather, nature has endowed them with different psychological characteristics that make it so that for one person, the same job that the other one is doing will be 10 times harder or 1,000 times harder than it is for the other person.
The satiated animal is not innately stupid or lazy. All he needs is a little motivation.
And the way this pans out at the macro level is that you have, say, 30% of the population, which we called the nimble, the intelligent, the diligent, that is basically exploiting the 70% of society, which are the masses. Neither can see how the other one is working internally because our internality is invisible to one another. We can't tell how much effort a person is really putting forth. And therefore, you have that 30% of elite who feel themselves working very hard and diligently. And you have the 70% masses who feel themselves working very hard and feel themselves working much harder than the nimble and diligent who dominate and control society. And thus they feel exploited. And here you have the conditions for constant turmoil and eventual overthrow of the government. And this is what we've seen throughout history. Now, we've had different ideas throughout history for how we can remedy this basic fundamental human problem. Let's have a kingdom, let's have a socialist government, a communist government, a democratic capitalist government. However, all of them suffer from this intrinsic root problem, which is that you have a very large quantity of people who feel that they are being exploited, who can never accept that someone like a Rothschild or a Mark Zuckerberg is actually working hard enough that they should be paid, say, 1,000 times as much as a simple worker. Whereas you have the elite who rightly feel that they should not have to give a dime of what they earned to the masses. Why should they have to give that up? Shouldn't they keep their wealth for a rainy day? Otherwise, they would become themselves a burden on society. Or they would deprive their natural heirs of what's due to them. The masses, on the other hand, are certain that they are working just as hard as those elite, only they're cunningly being deprived of their just deserts. But there's an even more fundamental problem that no philosopher has ever come up with a solution for, which is that each person feels himself as the center of the universe, as the most important. And if you just feel yourself, if you just examine yourself, how you feel, how does the importance of yourself, your body feel relative to the world around you? It's what I feel viscerally. It's the most important thing, while everything else around me is secondary. And each person, in their heart of hearts, in their most visceral sensation, feels this. And I can never really truthfully say that another person deserves much more than me, 1,000 times more than I'm getting. That's why any society, even if you build up that society with all kinds of nationalism and patriotism, if we don't address this issue of equality, that a person feels that that's the minimum, that I'll be equal with everyone else, that's the absolute minimum. Because in truth, I feel that the whole world was created for me. It revolves around me. This is the way that I experience the world from babyhood, that it's me and the world outside of me. And the idea that I will go out into this world and there will be people that will exploit me. In my heart of hearts, I can't accept this. And that is why those 70% masses, the more backward, quote-unquote, lazy types in society, eventually realize their collective power and overthrow the government, in which case there's neither peace for them or for the rich. This is why, to the first force, which we said was called truth, there were 3 additional forces called mercy, justice, and peace. And if truth functions on the ethos, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, meaning whatever you got from birth, that's what you're working with. Whatever I got from birth, that's what I'm working with, and I don't have to give you anything. Mercy functions on a different ethos, which is what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours. This is where those strong, nimble, intelligent elite start behaving indulgently with charity towards the masses. They give them a crumb, they throw them a little bit so that those masses will not come and overthrow the government and ruin the society for everyone. It's as if we want to correct what nature did wrong, that even though it doesn't make sense to me that I should have to share my fortune with those who are less fortunate by nature, I do so in order to keep the peace. So what happens when you start behaving indulgently and charitably towards the masses and creating all kinds of welfare and socialistic systems is that the masses grow, they proliferate, they become stronger, they unite, and eventually demand more and more, right up to the point of a complete change in government to a new form of government that will suit them, where the masses will rule and divide the abundance among them. And on the heels of this comes the 4th force called peace, or should we say peacemakers, because this force actually clothes in people and operates their actions. And this is what we see in history, that there are 2 types of quote-unquote peacemakers in society. There are ones that we can call constructors. Constructors are the kind of bleeding heart, open heart people who really want to live according to the law. What's mine is yours and what's yours is yours, meaning they're really giving people and they really do want peace in society and they want the best for society. But they're faint-hearted. They're not the hero types. They're not willing to sacrifice their lives or sacrifice the well-being of the entire society. There is another kind of peacemaker that comes that we can call destructors, and they belong to this class of nimble, intelligent elite. And what they mean by peace is something totally different, meaning they're willing to die themselves and sacrifice the entire society, whether it's by starting wars at home or starting conflicts on foreign soil. But the goal of it all is to get back to the attribute of truth, meaning what is mine is mine and what is yours is yours. And it's not fair to divide all of the abundance that the strong and nimble have created and give it out equally to everyone. And because these peacemakers are really just those very same elite who had it really good in the former society, Their goal is just to restore things back to that former society, to the way it was when the intelligent and diligent got most of the abundance in society, and the poor, the masses, they remain poor as they justly deserve. And thus, after a lot of blood is spilled, we return to a society based on the attribute of truth, meaning what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, and then the cycle repeats. And this is why history will always repeat itself or rhyme. Like players in a Shakespeare play, these different characters, meaning the nimble, diligent, intelligent ones, and the backward, lazy masses, will put on different costumes, and they'll duke it out, and that is why throughout history, you only have war, interrupted every once in a while by stints of peace. And this interplay of forces is actually battling within each person as well. Only we don't have the clothing of history and different people playing out their actions according to these forces to be able to identify how they're working inside of us. It's just a soup of unidentified forces inside of me that are constantly at war. How can we start to identify these four forces that are operating inside of us and actually operating all of our actions and decisions? Well, the hill on which the battle between forces in society is really waged is on the hill of what is actually motivating me to work. Meaning, if I'm that so-called lazy backwards person and I have to work really hard, while Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have to work that hard and gets paid 1,000 times what I do, what is motivating me to continue working? Rather than, say, destroying the government and bringing up a government in which I can work much less, because all my needs will be provided for. And if the masses rebel and create some kind of communist government, and I'm that diligent, smart, elite person, what motivates me to keep innovating and creating all of those good things for society that I used to get paid a lot of money for, and now I get paid the same as everyone else? What motivates me? To answer these questions and discover the solution for peace, both inner peace and world peace, start by trying to locate your motivation for everything you do, whether it's lifting a finger or something more significant. Because a machine, which is what our body is, cannot work without fuel. There must be a motivation. We only have to locate it.